Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine18. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. I cannot believe that it is the last day of August, but it is. So it's time for the end of month updates and favorites and decks I've received and worked with and books I've read and all of that good stuff that happens at the end of every month. In terms of just kind of general life update for me right now, folks know that I work in education. I teach in university, and right now it is approaching back to school time. We go back in September, and I'm not 100% sure yet what combination of online versus in-person I'm going to have. Things are still quite up in the air in this regard, so a lot of this month has been taken up trying to plan as best I can for my courses without really having that information at this point. So trying to plan and have, resources prepared and things like this, but not preparing as much as I necessarily normally would, or trying not to over prepare because of not wanting to end up with work that needs to be redone, So that's kind of where my headspace has been, just trying to get things in a good place for going back and teaching again, which I'm looking forward to very much so. I do really love my job, but I'm just having a hard time with getting things organized this semester, for reasons that in no way are unique to, me as an individual, and are really in no way unique to the university I teach at either. We're all kind of in this a bit uncertain place right now. Besides that, I've just been trying to enjoy as much of the beautiful weather as I've been able to this month, getting in as much swimming, little day trips here and there, to lakes to go canoeing, or just to enjoy the sunshine and time outside in the back garden and things like this as much as I can. It is starting to get cool already where I am, so there's a little bit less swimming happening, but I'm still going. I will be swimming as long as I possibly can, but just trying to enjoy that that sunshine and the last bit of the time when I am off work from my main job, which is the teaching job, and have a bit more time for things like that, things like getting outside, which has been great. I've just been enjoying bonfires and time at the river, time at lakes. We visited to a friend's cottage for a day, so that's all been wonderful to be able to do this month. It's also, I know that with the fall weather coming, I'll have less time to be outside because I'll be teaching. The weather will also be colder, and if I end up here being YouTube, that will be because I end up having a significant proportion of online teaching. I will not be surprised if this happens. When I'm teaching online, it means that I am, facilitating live online seminars and giving live online lectures, as well as recording a lot of mini lectures for my students. So when that is something that I need to spend a lot of my time on, I do generally find that YouTube kind of falls by the wayside a little bit, because there's only so much time that I want to be sitting in front of a webcam. And when work demands a lot of that, I feel less inclined to make a ton of videos. But I do have some ideas coming up for September, including continuing divination, speculations, and some other things. So looking forward to that. The summer is my favorite season, but I love the fall too. I also wanted to share in this little update that I got some zines from Wesley, who I've met right here on YouTube. I'm going to link Wesley's channel below, and Etsy shop, 22 Zines. And there's the 22 zines. And he has sent me some tarot zines. So there are some card-specific zines here. And they've just arrived, so I haven't gotten to really read them all the way through. Six of Swords is my favorite Minor Arcana card. I'm really excited about that one. Some tarot zines, and then also some of these Unfair Maiden zine that Wesley makes. And you'll recognize the artwork here on Unfair Maiden Volume 2, because this is by Aishamira Yashin, who's the artist of the Sapphic Enchantress Tarot, which I've shown on this channel. So I'm really excited and wanted to say thank you to Wesley for sending these wonderful zines to me, and I can't wait to read all of them, and I will share more about them once I've actually gotten to read them, but I'm really excited and looking forward to these. I did receive some decks this month, some of which I purchased this month, and some of which were Kickstarter backs that were from, previous months, but arrived this month. So I bought 2 decks this month. The first one I found at a shop when I was on vacation for my anniversary, and that one is called Discovering the Incredible Lives of Trees Playing Cards. Playing cards with 52 different images. And I found these at a shop inside Algonquin Park, and they had a bunch of them, these different Discover playing cards, and they were all sealed, and you couldn't look at them in the store. So I just bought this, it wasn't very expensive, thinking, oh, this is perfect, appeals to my druidry-oriented perspective on things to have these cards, Incredible Lives of Trees. And so the back of it is actually just the image from the box. So the backs all have this. And then the fronts of the cards have different images of trees, but they're mostly actually informational, with lots of text explaining different things about trees, different types of trees, and they have different titles. So Symbiotic Relationship of Trees and Animals, with a picture of the raccoons there. Different types of forests. This is Temperate Forest. How trees survive being eaten, and there's a picture of a deer there. Tree rings telling time and climate history. So I'm really excited about these. I'm not quite sure yet how I'm going to use them. I didn't really buy them thinking that I would just play cards with them, though my spouse and I do play cards quite a bit. I think that these will probably end up being a daily draw situation of shuffle and pick one, and then once that one has been picked, set it to the side until I've gone through the 52. That seems like a good way to work through all of the great information in this deck. It does seem, from what I've read through it, to be focused on trees in the United States for the most part. Though where I live in Ontario, there's a lot of overlap, since obviously the zones that different trees grow in are not bound by national borders in any way. So I'll be looking forward to learning with this deck. The other deck that I bought this month is the Journey Oracle by Kelly Fitzgerald. And this one, I've shown this deck before in the full size, but I treated myself to the mini. The mini, I think, is now sold out, but these decks were, both there in the different sizes, and they both come with a D20 to roll to pick a animal or a plant from the guidebook if you draw the animal or plant card. And they come in a nice little bag, drawstring bag, and they're really cool. The hexagonal shape, means that you can fit them together in different ways. for spreads, which is fun. There's a PDF guidebook that you can get, or there's also a link to a Lulu, like you can print out the guidebook if you want, or you could print out the PDF, I guess, and on your printer or get it bound, whatever you like. I really like this deck a lot. There's definitely, I think, a feel that very much appeals to me as someone exploring Druidry in this deck. It's a very, elemental energies, nature energies, based deck with correspondences of directions and elements and seasons. These ones are the cycles of life, so the symbols here are the different quadrants of the birth chart in these ones. And the paintings are just beautiful. And I use the larger deck quite a lot, but it is just at a size that I can't quite lay out the whole deck on my reading table. Just slightly too big for that. When I have a lot of stuff on my reading table. If I take everything off, I can do it, but otherwise not. And so, I knew that I would end up with this at some point, and this just happened to be the month that I decided to pick it up. So I'm glad to have this this deck in the mini size. I also received 2 decks that were Kickstarters this month, so decks that I had backed, months ago, but both arrived this month. The first one I've shown before in a video I shared my first impressions of, and that is the Phenomena Oracle by Jessica Bott, which features, of course, natural phenomena. I think of this as being, a deck about weather, but there are other things in here too that are not just weather. So there are some, astronomical, I guess, phenomena like comets and things like this. There are lots of weather cards like the rain. And this deck is just, for me, really evocative. It did come with, in my walkthrough gets into this, a little pamphlet with some keywords in it. I looked at it once and haven't looked at it again. I don't find that I feel like I need it. I think that these cards, speak enough and, are quite inspiring. Which is not me saying there's anything wrong with the pamphlet. It's just, I haven't felt the need to look at the keywords. I can, I come up with my own interpretations as I work with this deck quite readily. And the cards really, I think, speak to kind of energetic states or emotional states really well. So I've really enjoyed working with this deck for the short time that I've had it. The Phenomena Oracle by Jessica Bott. The other deck that I received that was a Kickstarter deck I just got, and I want to really work with this deck, as my only working tarot deck for a while. So I've still got the deck in order, and I'm working my way through the guidebook right now. And that is the LandBackTarot and the Oracle of Colonization by Krista Demore-Flute, known here on YouTube and elsewhere as Aunty K of Aunty K's Tarot. And I am so excited to have this deck, and it comes with this beautiful guidebook. This guidebook is like a rose petal finish guidebook, which, whether you like rose petal finish cards or not, which these cards are not, they're linen, the rose petal guidebook is fancy to read with. I think that this is just beautiful. And the guidebook contains full color images of every card, quite large. It also includes images where some of the cards are inspired by photographs that are significant. So in those cases, it will include the photo as well. like this card, which is the Five of Arrows, includes this image taken during standoff at Oka. And other of the cards are inspired by folks in the creator's life, family members, friends, and so their photos are featured in here as well, beside the card, you know, if they've inspired a card. This isn't a walkthrough, so I'm not going to go through everything about this deck and guidebook here, but there are some spreads, you know, and lots of analysis, you know, and I really appreciate that, and I'm really looking forward to really, you know, exploring and learning with this deck. I'll show a couple of the majors again. The deck is still in order. The cards are large. These are a linen finish cardstock. I don't have, well, to compare a kind of more standard tarot size of the Phenomena Oracle, you can see here that the LandBackTarot is quite large, which is great to see the images up close. And the backs are this amazing birch bark. The camera's not going to pick up how amazing this is. It's so textural, and the colors are incredible here. Amazing. This deck, I feel like, is going to be demanding of me in the best possible way, in terms of pushing my, you know, my analysis in terms of understanding, you know, decolonial approaches in a way that I'm really grateful for. And the art is just beautiful, I think. So much color. Really great. And I have been waiting for this deck to arrive. And it came just recently. So I'm so happy to have this deck, which is again the LandBackTarot, an Oracle of Colonization by Aunty K's Tarot. I'll just read the back of the box here of this deck. It says, the LandBackTarot and the Oracle of Colonization is indigenous, brown, and gender neutral. This deck presents classic RWS understandings from a radical decolonial perspective, looking towards indigenous futures of autonomy, freedom, and land back. This fool's journey is decolonial, laying out realities and lives for marginalized, colonized, This fool's journey is decolonial, laying out realities and lives for marginalized and colonized readers and queerants. The Oracle of Colonization, which is in addition to the 78 tarot cards, there is also an oracle. The Oracle of Colonization looks at the shadows, adding that extra needed healing for lives under colonialism. Together, this deck is for everyone looking for an anti-colonial decentering of realities, and that is what I am really looking forward to exploring with this deck. I am grateful to Aunty K for producing this and for putting this out into the world, and really looking forward to working with it. I have one more deck I could show you, which is a kind of a joke. This isn't really a deck. I made myself, this is something that I've been using a lot this month though, which is why I wanted to share it. I made myself a deck of OM flashcards. And so here's my terrible printing of Baith, for example, and Lush, Farn, and so on it goes. And so I've made these for myself, and I've been shuffling them like a deck to help me learn OM. On the backs, I've put the tree that's associated with each one, the translation of the name, some keywords, some associations with the tree specifically, and then just some extra, you know, bits from the different books that I've been reading to learn my OM. So this is, you know, this is a one-of-a-kind, one-of-a-kind handmade deck. So I made a deck. There it is. So lots of my time has actually been dedicated to this. I've been working through Kelly Fitzgerald of the Truth in Stories OM class, which is a playback. So you get the videos and you can just kind of watch them on your own time. And so I've been working through that and reading a couple of books, and this is one of my explorations in the context of my studies with the AODA for Druidry. So I've really been enjoying learning this new system. I've really just been studying more so than actually reading or utilizing at this stage, but I'm really learning a lot, which has been great. Books I've read this month, that I finished this month. I only finished 6 books this month, which is not very many for me, and I don't have anything to show you because everything was on an ebook. I've been trying to make good use of the ebooks, for mostly environmental reasons, though also cost reasons is good. So I read 6 books this month. The first book that I will mention, I read with Seiji, who's the Artisan Geek on YouTube. And Seiji has a Patreon, and associated with the Patreon is a book club of diverse classics. And we chat about those diverse classics on the Discord server that's associated with it. And so for August, we read The Devil's Dance. And The Devil's Dance is by Hamid Ismailov, who is a Uzbek author. And this book is a fictionalized, for sure, account of the imprisonment in Uzbekistan of a well-known Uzbek author who was imprisoned and killed during purges under Stalin. And so this novel follows the author while he's in prison and his interactions with different prisoners and with the guards and prison staff. And he, while he's there, he's also thinking about the book that he wanted to write. And so the book that he wanted to write and the kind of research that he had done on it and trying to kind of learn more about his historical subject that he was going to write about kind of blends and merges with his own life throughout the course of the novel. It was not an easy read by any means, but I really, really thought it was excellent. I would love to read more from Hamid Ismailov. Definitely recommend. Difficult read, but excellent. The second one that I will talk about, I read with Katie Flowers in Katie Flowers Blossom Book Club, where we also have a Discord server that we can chat about the books, and we have a discussion live to talk about the books at the end of each month. And we actually read Kellyanne Maddox of Tarot YouTube fame's book, Rebel Witch. And I liked a lot about Rebel Witch. I think that what Kellyanne does in it is really give a okay to particularly new folks, who are getting interested in witchcraft for the first time, to explore and to play around and not to feel, constrained by, books that suggest that you have to do witchcraft in a particular way in order for it to be meaningful for you or in order for it to be valid. So it's a really encouraging book that really pushes the reader to think about what they want their craft practice to look like, and to think about all the questions related to that. And there's journal prompts for each chapter to delve into these kinds of questions. In some ways, I will say, as someone who does not consider themselves a witch and who is not looking to become a witch, I'm not quite the target audience for this book, but I'm glad that this book exists. I think that, some of the decisions that Kellyanne's made about the book and how to approach it, like, for example, not gendering anything and not, suggesting that you need a lot of tools to be a witch, things like this, make the book more accessible and approachable. If I was going to point out a issue that I had with the book, I think that the, be a rebel witch, do what you want, make your craft yours, take whatever approach you want, there's no one way. I think that kind of approach gets to be potentially not the greatest when you get into chapters on things like ethics, right? And I applaud Kellyanne for putting in, chapters on issues like ethics and discussing cultural appropriation, discussing environmental impacts, environmental impacts of things like crystal collecting, and going there and being willing to have those conversations. My concern with it, though, is that when these kinds of things are couched in a broader anything goes kind of orientation towards things, it can be minimizing of the seriousness of those kinds of conversations, right? Particularly like if you think about something like cultural appropriation, it's like, this is not an anything goes issue. So that, I think, could have been, there are points in those topics in particular where I thought that it could have been much more firm and much more definitive in my view. But I do appreciate a lot about Kellyanne's book, and I think that folks who are new to witchcraft would get a lot out of it. And I think that the journal prompts in particular are really great. And I didn't do them all as I was working through the book, because again, I'm not creating a new witchcraft practice right now. But, I think that the questions are thought-provoking and important, and, I could easily gain from doing these journaling questions, just maybe tweak them a little to be, using language that's more relevant to my own path and my own practice. So I enjoyed reading Rebel Witch by Kellyanne Maddox. And I will say that for folks who are wondering about this, the ebook is very well formatted and very easily navigable. I didn't feel like I was missing anything by having the ebook instead of the hard copy, which for a lot of witchcraft kinds of books is not the case, so worth mentioning. The next one I will mention is a novel, which is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina, written by Zoraida Cordova. And this book I got as a advanced reader copy, and it is a magical realism novel that follows a family, and they are a Ecuadorian American family living in the United States. Some of the book takes place in the United States, and some of the book takes place in Ecuador. And the beginning of the book, I'm really trying not to give spoilers for this book because it was great. I really liked this book. The matriarch of the family, Orquídea Divina, of the title of the book, at the beginning sends correspondence to her nieces and nephews and children and grandchildren, calling them all back to her home, to the family home, for an inheritance. Hence the title, The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina. And I don't really want to give anything away from there. This book is, again, magical realism. So there is, fantastical elements to the story, but it's also, I feel like, a multi-generational family book as much as anything, dealing with the relationships between the different generations of the family, and the different tensions that exist between the different generations of the family, and dealing with the impacts of family traumas on subsequent generations. And I thought that the book did that really beautifully. And I had never read anything by Zoraida Cordova before. I believe that she has written a number of other books prior, but that this book was the first adult title from her. So I am looking forward to reading more. I then read a collection of short stories called Even Greater Mistakes by Charlie Jane Anders. Charlie Jane Anders is a predominantly science fiction author. She is fantastic. I've read a novel from Charlie Jane Anders before. And Even Greater Mistakes is a short story collection, and a lot of the short stories in this collection have been published other places, either in magazines or online. So I had read a few of these short stories before. In particular, there was one short story about a bookstore, and that one was chosen by the Short Story Club a number of months ago. And so in the Short Story Club, you get sent a short story, and then you can go to a kind of a Zoom meeting with the author. And so I had done that, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I picked up Even Greater Mistakes, which I also got as an advanced reader copy. And, like any short story collection is going to be uneven. Not every story is going to appeal equally to every reader. But overall, I thought that it was a good mix of stories between some that are definitely comedic, like predominantly comedic, and some that are much more serious, that I would say are horror even. And that it was cohesive without being repetitive, which is very difficult to do, I think. Like all the stories very much sound like Charlie Jane Anders, but they're also wide-ranging and show, the breadth of her talent, which is considerable. And also I like that what they've done in terms of editing this book is that each of the stories in Even Greater Mistakes has introduction before it that Anders explains a little bit about why she wrote this particular story. So some of that is about, they were looking for short stories with this theme, and so I was exploring this theme, or she'll talk about, some of the stories maybe started out a bit longer and got cut down, or the theme kind of shifted a little bit as she was working on the story. And I really always like hearing those kinds of backdrop from the author. I liked to have a little bit extra of what they were thinking. So I really liked how the stories were introduced in that way. And there were some fantastic ones. And there's one or two actually, I teach gender studies for folks who don't know. There's one or two stories in Even Greater Mistakes that I would totally put on a syllabus and have students read, because they were wonderful and also explore important, social, political themes in really interesting ways that I appreciate very much. The next book, which is the second to last book, and this is the last book I read in terms of chronology. I just finished this book. I loved and 5-starred so enthusiastically, and that was A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. Becky Chambers, I love. She writes science fiction that feels like a warm hug to me. A lot of the books that I read are scary, are intense, are not necessarily the happiest reads, and I feel like Becky Chambers' books are just so gentle and subtle, and they feel like, not that they don't deal with serious things, but they're so heartwarming in a particular kind of way that is hard to describe. So good. But Psalm for the Wild Built, I'm just going to share how I described this book in my review, because I took care to write out a little book review for this book that did not include any spoilers beyond what is basically in the book description, like on the book jacket. And it was hard. It was hard to not spoiler this book. So what I had written in my review, besides just saying, I love this, I love this, I love this, to describe the book, is that it follows Sibling Dex, and Sibling Dex is a monk who has grown weary of their vocation and sets off in search of something new. It also follows Splendid Speckled Mosscap, a robot that Dex encounters in the forest. This is the first time in many years that a human has seen a robot, or vice versa. And what follows is almost akin to a first contact story, as well as a meditation on the human condition, humans' place in the environment as a part of nature, and the meaning of life. A quiet, reflective novella that brought me so much joy. And this is going to be the first in a series called, suitably, Monk and Robot. And I am so excited for every book in this series. I cannot even tell you. I loved Becky Chambers' Wayfarers series, and I know I'm going to love Monk and Robot as well. So good. The last book that I will mention is the one that I chose based on my TBR cards by Bowties and Books, Jessie at Bowties and Books. And so for August, I chose 2 cards. I chose the card indicating to read a book set in India, and I chose ABC, choose a book that starts with the first letter of your name. And so I decided this time, since I had some other books that I already wanted to read and had already started, that instead of trying to find 2 separate ones, I would try to find a book that starts with L set in India. And I did. It took a little bit of thinking to come up with something that would suit both of those prompts. But I ended up reading Layla by Prayang Akbar. And Layla is a book that I first heard of because it is actually the basis of a series on Netflix, which I have bookmarked, but I have not watched. So I don't really like reading a book after I've seen the film or the television. So I'm glad that I didn't get to the television first. I will watch the television show now, but I like to have the book first so that when I'm reading the book, I don't have, really clear, predetermined imagery from film or television in my mind. I prefer to just think about it, in my own way and based on what the books describe. So Layla follows a mother, and she is navigating a near future world, which is India. And it's a near future India in which divisions between classes and families and religions have become extraordinarily rigid. Like walls have gone up. And it's an extremely divided society. And it follows this mother whose daughter has been taken from her and taken from her family as she was married to a man of a different religion. And so she is on her own for most of the book, and she's looking for her daughter. And she's navigating this world in which her rights are extraordinarily circumscribed, extremely limited. She has been through a kind of forced institutionalization, and it's a very difficult read. It was very affecting. I experienced it very much as a feminist novel, and I recommend it for sure, especially for folks who would be interested in reading something that would be reminiscent of even something like 1984, something like Handmaid's Tale, this kind of dystopian explorations. Layla by Prayang Akbar was very, very good. And also starts with L and is set in India. So with that, I would like to pick a few more cards. I think that for this video, I will roll to determine how many cards I should pick. I'm only rolling the D6 because I don't want a ridiculous high number. I'm going to roll it on the corner of my desk, and I promise I'll be honest about what comes up. I don't want a big number because I have some books that I really want to read in September already that may or may not fit into any kind of prompts that I might get. So let's not get a big number or else I'm going to be combining. 5. I get 5. So I'm going to pick 5 of the Bow Ties and Books TBR cards by Jessie of Bow Ties and Books. You can check out their YouTube channel, and they have an Etsy shop where they sell these cards. I'm not even going to leave out the 2 cards I just had because there's lots of books that start with L and lots of books that are set in India, so no reason to not duplicate those. I'll put them back in. And I'm picking 5. What 5 prompts should I read in September? Also, several YouTube channels are doing a sci-fi September readathon with a bunch of sci-fi prompts, so I was kind of thinking of doing that too. There's a bingo card with sci-fi prompts on it, so it's going to be a month. Also, I go back to my teaching job fullish time in September, so I'll be like doing nothing but reading at this point. 5 cards. Okay. The cards are saying to stop shuffling. Okay. We'll cut the deck. That's good. Black Girl Magic. Science fiction with a black protagonist. Amazing. I can think of a lot of good books for that prompt. Shit. A book over 500 pages long. Shit. Oh, now I really have to combine some of these because 500 pages. I've been reading a lot of novellas and things, which is how, so often many of these months will be like, oh, I've read 10 books this month. That's because some of them will be 100 pages long. 500 pages. I can do it. Starts with the first letter of my name again. Okay. An Own Voices book centering a Muslim family. And Lost in Translation, a book translated from another language. This is going to be a month. I'm going to have to do some real planning to make this happen. To read a book translated from another language, an Own Voices book centering a Muslim family, a book that starts with L, a 500-page plus book, and a science fiction book with a black protagonist. All of those things in September when I'm back at work. Cheer me on. I am going to make a good effort. I've done it every single time so far with these cards. I've actually made it through my prompts. So I'm going to do my absolute best. The 500-page one makes me a bit nervous, but we shall see. Finally, last in the update is Animal of the Month. And for August, my Animal of the Month is the eagle, or specifically the bald eagle. And this is from Jamie Sawyer's Nature Portals deck. Round animal deck. Lovely. Bald eagle. And so I did some learning about bald eagles. I have seen a bald eagle before. And so I had some, image of them. They're apex predators who are at the top of the food chain, who don't have really predators that prey on them because they're at the top of the food chain. They are part of a species pair. This is something I didn't know about. I'd never heard of this before. And probably lots of other folks have heard of this, but I found this very interesting. They're part of a species pair, which means, they're very, very closely related to another species of eagle, to the point that they're, not indistinguishable, but they're very clearly related. And the other eagle that they're very clearly related to is called the white-tailed eagle. So the bald eagle is closely related to the white-tailed eagle, which, as its name suggests, has a white tail, but a brown, all brown body and brown head. And the white-tailed eagle is found in northern Russia, northern kind of Japan, northern Scandinavian countries, this whole kind of area. So in a different region completely than the bald eagle. And the bald eagle is also sacred to many, many indigenous nations here on Turtle Island, where I live, and is considered in some to be a messenger between humans and spirit. And when I think of the bald eagle, I think of, now that I learned that something that's interesting about the bald eagle is that it is one of the most what's called opportunistic eating eagles, or animals in general, which means the number of species that a bald eagle has been recorded and reported as eating is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of species, right? And so they have this massively wide-ranging diet, depending on where they are, that is all kinds of species of fish, mammals, snakes, anything that you can think of. They also have the record for being able to carry the most weight of any bird, and being the birds that build the biggest nests. And so thinking about particularly the opportunistic eating thing, which I find interesting, how many different things that the bald eagle eats. The bald eagle is always, for some reason, it always has been, the bird that I picture when I think of the phrase bird's eye view. And maybe it's just because I think of them as, they're so large and they fly so high up. But I think of the bald eagle when I think of bird's eye view. And when we think about bird's eye view as meaning, being able to step back from something and get a kind of long range view, get a kind of, not necessarily detached, because I don't subscribe to the idea that is entirely possible, but get a kind of broader view on a situation, considering more factors, by taking a bird's eye view of something. That is interesting, thought of alongside the opportunistic eating thing, wherein you see more possibilities. Having a bird's eye view means seeing more possibilities and seeing more options, and being able to, perhaps be more strategic, being able to choose from more directions and more possibilities because of taking a step back from a situation. So I think that if for me the bald eagle counsels something, it may be that, a kind of sense that, there are more options than you think, that there are more possibilities than you might be able to see from the spot that you are. But if you get that long range view, more possibilities will come into sight. So that's what I was thinking about with the bald eagle. And I found that to be a useful thing to think about. I do sometimes have to prod myself to think about, with anything, when I'm stuck on how to do something for work or anything, okay, what's the third option here? What's the thing that you're not seeing? Take a step back and think about it. And so that is really what bald eagle has helped with this month for me. To pick a new animal card for September, I would like to pick from this deck Fauna Inspirations, Nature Inspired Illumination cards by Rebecca Lefebvre and Phoebe Hunt. This one is from aveclavie.com. And they have a couple of different decks. This is a Fauna Inspirations. I believe they have a Flora Inspirations, a plant-based one, and there's a third one. It might be Mythical Creatures. I'm not sure, but this is the only one I have. This is actually a deck that I have struggled to connect with, I will say. The artwork is beautiful, but what I struggle with this deck is that it has, and this is actually why I bought the deck, it has paragraphs of meaning on the back of each card, which I think is great, but I've realized that it's actually kind of challenging for me because if it doesn't align with my own thinking about the animal, then it can be kind of more jarring than helpful, if that makes sense. And also the language that they use is extremely gendered, which I find not the best for me as a reader. So I really want to pick a card from this deck though, because the artwork again is beautiful. So I've taken out a couple of cards that are animals that I've already picked for 2021, but leaving the vast majority in. And I'm looking straight at the camera and not the cards, because obviously with text on one side and a picture on the other, you can see, you know, what's coming up. But I want to pick an animal as a surprise. So the animal that I will explore in September, I'm going to cut the deck, will be the crab. And the keyword for crab here is courage. So I will be learning about crabs in September and have something to share about them and the end of month recap then. So that's it for me this month. Thank you so much for watching, if you stuck with me this long through this updates video. And I wish you a great day and a happy September, which is upon us, and I will see you soon. Bye.